The second Sarah walked onto that shooting range with her old Remington, people started laughing. While everyone else had fancy gear and expensive equipment, she looked like she'd just rolled out of bed. One of the young trainers took one look at her and smirked. "What are you doing here? Taking selfies or actually trying to shoot?" Sarah didn't say a word back. She just kept her head down and checked her rifle. But when those 3 moving targets popped up and she dropped every single one in under 5 seconds, you could hear a pin drop. What nobody knew was that she was the only person ever trained by Ghost Viper, the most legendary sniper in military history. The Arizona heat was brutal that day, turning the dusty range into a furnace. This wasn't some weekend hobby camp. It was where the real deal came to play. Reserve officers, competitive shooters, rich guys who thought money could buy them skills. Sarah Mitchell didn't fit in at all. She was 28, wearing a beat-up gray t-shirt and jeans with holes in the knees. Her boots looked like they'd walked 1,000 miles. No fancy vest, no expensive scope, nothing flashy. Just a simple ponytail and an old canvas bag hanging off her shoulder. But the way she carried that Remington, like it was part of her body, should have told people something. Nobody was paying attention, though. They were too busy judging her before she even got to the firing line. Over at the equipment check, guys were showing off their gear like peacocks. Rifles that cost more than cars, scopes with all sorts of digital displays. They're throwing around technical terms, trying to one-up each other. Sarah stood off to the side with her rifle on a beat-up folding table covered in knife scratches. Some guy with a crew cut and a scope worth $3,000 leans over to his buddy and goes, "Check out the lost tourist over there. Bet she took a wrong turn." Off a hiking trail. His friend pops his gum and laughs. "What's she gonna do, make TikToks with that dinosaur?" Sarah just kept cleaning her barrel with this old rag, steady as a rock. Didn't even look up, just focused on her work like their comments were background noise. Then this woman walks up, hair pulled back tight, boots so shiny you could see your reflection. She's got some high-tech rifle and an attitude to match. She gets right in Sarah's face and says loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're embarrassing yourself. This place is for serious shooters, not some charity case with a hand-me-down gun." She leans in closer, really nasty now. "Why don't you save us all some time and leave before you make a fool of yourself?" The crowd ate it up, laughing and clapping like it was a show. Sarah's hand tensed up for just a second, then relaxed. She worked the bolt, checked the chamber, set the rifle down. Smooth as silk, like the woman hadn't even spoken. The young trainer swaggers by with his clipboard, radio crackling. "Hey, sweetheart," he calls out so everyone can hear. "You sure you're in the right place? This ain't no Instagram convention." More laughter, mean and sharp. Another woman in tactical gear looks Sarah up and down like she's inspecting garbage. "Those boots came straight from a thrift store. And that gun. My dad's got one rusting in his garage." Sarah paused for half a second, then slid the bolt back with a quiet click. She nodded to herself and set the rifle down, metal cool against her palm. A guy in expensive camo, wearing a watch that caught the sun like a spotlight, joined in. "Who brings a Remington to a place like this? That thing's older than my kid." His buddy, some reserve officer puffing out his chest with his badge on display, chuckles. "She's probably here looking for a boyfriend. Look at her, no gear, no style. Doesn't belong." Sarah zipped up her canvas bag, the sound cutting through all the noise, slung it over her shoulder and headed for the range. The crowd parted, not out of respect, but like they didn't want to catch whatever made her so out of place. She never looked back, just walked steady with her rifle held low but ready. The first real test was all about reflexes. The range master, this grizzled guy with a gray beard and a voice like sandpaper, laid it out simple. 3 moving targets, 5 seconds. Miss one, you're done. All the hotshots lined up, confidence oozing from every pore, their rifles gleaming in the sun. One by one, they took their shots. Most missed at least one target, steel plates swinging there untouched. Some cursed, blaming wind or bad sights. Others just shrugged like they didn't care. Sarah went last. Stepped up, boots scuffing dirt, rifle steady in her hands. Her stance looked casual, but she was rooted like a tree. The buzzer went off. 3 targets darted left to right. Bang. 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 All 3 dropped clean. Echoes fading to nothing. Dead silence. The senior trainer, wiry guy with busted knuckles, just stared, jaw clenched tight. "That technique," he muttered, barely audible. "Impossible. Only Ghost Viper ever shot like that." Some guy in a black cap breaks the silence with a mocking whistle, rifle slung over his shoulder like a trophy. "Lucky shot doesn't win wars," he yells, voice dripping with disdain. "Think 3 bullets make you a sniper? Go back to your knitting, lady." The crowd laughed, but it felt different now, uneasy, like they sensed something changing. Sarah adjusted her stance, eyes flicking to the targets, then back to her rifle. She pulled out a small tool, made a tiny adjustment to her scope with the faintest click. The trainer's words hung in the air, but she didn't respond. Instead, she ran her thumb over a small scratch on the ray. Flea stock, old and deliberate, like someone's signature. Nobody in the crowd noticed, but that senior trainer's eyes got real narrow, fingers twitching like he was putting pieces together. Sarah lowered her rifle slow and careful, stepped back, boots leaving faint prints in the dust. The whispers started up again, but they weren't kind. "Lucky shot," some guy in tactical gear muttered. "Beginner's luck," said another, fiddling with his scope like it was a security blanket. The crew-cut shooter snorted loud enough for everyone to hear. "Doesn't mean she's good. Probably practiced that one trick for weeks." Sarah pulled out a water bottle, plastic all scratched up, cap worn smooth from use. She took a sip, eyes scanning the horizon like she could see something nobody else could. The trainer with the clipboard walked by again, slower this time, eyes going between her and his notes. He didn't say anything, but his knuckles went white, gripping that pen. The big event was the precision test, a 1,000-meter shot that separated the pros from the wannabes. All the shooters gathered near the main tent, sipping energy drinks, adjusting their gear, voices loud with confidence. Sarah stood off by herself under this scraggly mesquite tree, shadows cutting across her face. Her bag was slumped at her feet while she cleaned her scope with a small cloth, fingers moving gentle, almost tender-like. Guy in the camo hat walked by, that flashy watch catching sunlight. "She's still here," he said to his buddy, voice full of disbelief. "Thought she'd have run home crying by now." His friend, tall guy with a goatee, laughed. "Maybe she's waiting for a participation trophy. Poor thing." This older man, maybe 50s, weathered face but pristine gear, stepped right up to Sarah under that tree. Voice low and mean as a snake. "You're wasting everyone's time. This is a professional range, not a playground for wannabes. Pack up and go before you embarrass yourself anymore." He gestured at her rifle, lip curling in disgust. "That thing belongs in a museum, not on a firing line." Few nearby shooters nodded along, smirks growing wider. Sarah's hand stopped moving on the cloth for just a moment, fingers curling slightly. She looked at him, eyes steady as stone, then went right back to cleaning her scope like nothing happened. The man scoffed and walked away, but his words drew more whispers, the crowd feeding off his cruelty like it was fuel for a fire. A kid, maybe 16, hauled a water jug past her. Camp volunteer with a sweat-soaked t-shirt, arms thin but strong from lugging supplies all day. He stopped, hesitant, then spoke up soft, "You're pretty good." His voice almost got swallowed by all the camp noise. Sarah looked up, eyes guarded but kind, like she was deciding whether to trust him. "Thanks," she said, voice low and steady. The kid shifted his weight, glancing at the crowd. "My dad used to talk about this sniper called Ghost Viper," he said, careful-like. "Said he could hit anything, anywhere. Nobody knew his real name, but he was a legend." Sarah's hands went still on the cloth for a moment, fingers curling just a bit. She nodded, then went back to her scope, movements the same but her jaw a little tighter. The kid lingered like he wanted to say more, then shuffled off with that jug sloshing in his hands. The event official, woman in her 40s with a headset and clipboard, stepped up to announce the finalists. Her voice crackled through the speakers. All business. "Only the top 12 advance to the 1,000-meter challenge," she said, scanning the crowd. She read off names, each one getting claps, nods, or smug grins. Then she paused, fingers tapping that clipboard. "Sorry, Ms. Mitchell. Your scores were fine, but we need reliable candidates." That word reliable landed heavy, dripping with condescension. Some guy in the back yelled, "Let the amateur go home!" Another voice, softer but crueler, whispered, "They don't want her embarrassing the group." Sarah didn't even flinch. She slung her rifle over her shoulder, that worn, frayed strap, and walked back to the tree. Steps slow, unhurried, like she was walking through a memory. Under the mesquite, she sat cross-legged, bag open beside her, pulled out this little tin of gun oil, label long gone, metal dented from years of use. Her fingers worked the cloth, cleaning the bolt with a rhythm that felt almost sacred, like she was tending something alive. Couple shooters walked by, voices low but clear. "She's got to be humiliated," one said, almost pitying. "I'd have left by now." The other snorted, adjusting his tactical gloves. "She's too stubborn or too dumb to know she's outclassed." Sarah kept her eyes on her work, but her jaw tightened just enough to notice. She set the bolt down, picked up a round, held it up to the light, checking it like it held some secret. Her fingers moved slow, deliberate, like she was holding on to something nobody else could see. Then, everything changed. One of the lead shooters, cocky guy with sponsor logos all over his vest, name patch reading J, slipped on a loose rock during practice. Hit the ground hard, shoulder twisting with this sickening pop. Medics swarmed in, radios crackling, hands quick but careful. Rangemaster shook his head, voice low and final. "Dislocated. He's out." The crowd tensed, whispers spreading like wildfire. Senior instructor, that grizzled guy with the gray beard, scanned the group, eyes sharp under his cap brim. They landed on Sarah, still under her tree, rifle resting beside her. "Mitchell!" he called, voice cutting through the noise. "You're up!" Heads turned, murmurs rippled. Sarah stood, brushed dirt off her jeans, walked, toward the tent with her rifle in hand, steps steady as stone. Before she reached the tent, some shooter in a high-end tactical vest blocked her path, face twisted with hate. "You're not fooling anyone," he said loud enough to draw a crowd. "They're letting you in out of pity, but you're gonna choke. People like you don't belong here. Go back to wherever you crawled from." He spat in the dirt near her boots, deliberate and vicious. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others smirking. Sarah's eyes flicked to the spit, then back to his face, expression calm but sharp like a blade held still. She stepped around him, boots crunching gravel, kept walking with her rifle steady in her hands. The man laughed, but it was forced, like he knew he'd crossed a line but couldn't back down. The finalist tent was a whole different world, shrine to high-tech gear and even higher egos. Tables lined with rifles that gleamed like show cars, scopes with digital displays, tripods adjusted to the millimeter. Air smelled of gun oil and sweat. Sarah set her Remington down, that woodstock all scratched and worn, and the Snickers started instantly. Shooter with slick hair and a $5,000 rifle, name tag reading Travis, leaned back in his chair, grin sharp as a knife. "You're in over your head, kid," he said, voice dripping condescension. "This ain't a hobbyist game." Another guy, older with a thick beard and scar across his cheek, grinned cold. "What's with the thrift store look? Borrow that gun from your grandpa?" Sarah didn't respond, just checked her ammo, fingers moving with that same steady rhythm, like the taunts were just dust settling around her. Woman with red nails who'd been watching from the sidelines piped up, voice sharp as her manicure. "She's gonna crash and burn," she told her friend, blonde with matching tactical outfit. "Look at her. No prep, no gear, just walking in like she belongs with us." Travis laughed loud and showy. "You bet she's never been to a real range? Probably learned shooting in some backyard with beer cans." Sarah slid around into the chamber, that click loud in the tense air. She looked up, eyes meeting Travis's for just a split second, calm but piercing. Then went back to her work, face unreadable, hands steady as ever. That's when Travis decided to push further. He stood up, grin wide, voice carrying across the tent. "I got a bet for you, Miss YouTube Sharpshooter," making sure every head turned. 10 grand says you can't hit a target at 800 meters using a convex mirror. Backward shot. You in? The tent erupted in laughter. Guys hooting, slapping their thighs. Woman with red nails smirked, arms crossed. "She's not that stupid." Sarah set her rifle down, movement slow and deliberate. She looked at Travis, eyes steady, almost curious, like she was seeing right through him. "I'm in," she said, voice soft but clear, cutting through the noise like a blade. The laughter stopped for a second, then roared back louder, the crowd smelling blood. "She's gonna eat dirt," someone muttered, shaking their head. As Sarah walked to the side range for the mirror shot, group of shooters followed, voices a chorus of mockery. Man with goatee and tactical watch, name tag reading Kyle, stepped in front of her, holding up a phone to record. "Smile for the fail reel," he sneered, camera angled to catch her face. "This is going viral when you miss. Budget sniper flops at pro camp. Hashtag pathetic." The crowd roared, some pulling out their own phones, lenses glinting like vultures' eyes. Sarah's fingers tightened on her rifle, knuckles pale for a moment. She stepped past him, shoulder brushing his arm, kept walking with boots steady on uneven ground. Kyle kept filming, his laughter following her like a shadow, crowd's jeers growing louder with every step. The mirror shot was set up on a side range, spectacle that drew a crowd like moths to flame. Target was 800 meters out, steel plate no bigger than a pizza pan glinting in the sun. Convex mirror propped on a stand, angled just right. Surface scratched, but functional. Travis handed it to Sarah with a mocking bow, grin smug. "Good luck, sweetheart." Voice thick with sarcasm. Sarah took the mirror, fingers brushing the edge, face calm. She adjusted her stance, checked her optics, raised the rifle. Movements precise, almost delicate. The crowd hushed, waiting for the inevitable miss, phones out, ready to capture the failure. She angled the shot, body still, breath steady. Then, bang! The monitor lit up. Bullseye, dead center. The range went silent, air heavy with shock. Retired veteran at the back, cap pulled low, hands weathered from years of service, muttered, "Only Ghost Viper could have taught that kind of reflex precision." As the crowd processed the impossible shot, senior instructor stepped closer to the monitor, eyes narrowing at the data. He tapped the screen, turned to Sarah, voice low but urgent. "That shot wasn't just luck. The angle, the timing, it's textbook Viper. Where'd you learn that?" The crowd shifted, some leaning in, others frowning, their mockery replaced by unease. Sarah adjusted her rifle, fingers brushing a faint notch on the stock, mark too deliberate to be random. She didn't answer, just gave a small nod and stepped back, boots scuffing dirt. The instructor stared, hand twitching like he wanted to say more, but the moment passed, crowds' whispers growing louder, tinged with something new. Doubt. The silence didn't last. Egos like that don't stay quiet. By the time the 1,000-meter challenge approached, the taunts were back, sharper, more desperate. Burly ex-Marine, arms crossed, voice like a foghorn, stepped up to Sarah just Beffett. Or her turn. Name tag read Hank, eyes hard like he had something to prove. "You think you're hot stuff now, huh?" Voice booming across the range. "One fluke doesn't make you a sniper. I dare you to duel. One shot, one target. Fastest and most accurate wins. You in, or you gonna hide like those amateur girls on YouTube?" The crowd started chanting, "Duel! Duel!" Voices rising like a storm. Sarah looked at him, face calm, hands steady on her rifle. "I'm in," she said, voice soft but firm, like a door clicking shut. Right before the duel, woman in designer tactical cap, sunglasses perched on her head, leaned into Sarah's space, voice dripping venom. "You're a fraud," she hissed, words meant to cut deep. "Everyone knows you're faking it. You'll choke, and we'll all be here to watch you fall apart." She flicked her wrist, tossing a crumpled range pass at Sarah's feet, paper landing in the dust. The crowd snickered, some clapping, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Sarah's gaze dropped to the pass, fingers tightening briefly on her rifle. She bent down, picked it up, tucked it in her pocket, movement slow, deliberate. Then she straightened, eyes meeting the woman's for a moment, calm but unyielding, before turning back to the range, her silence louder than any comeback. The duel was set for the main range. Crowd packed tight, breath held. Target was a human silhouette 1,000 meters out, small circle marking the left eye. Rules were simple. First, to hit the eye wins. Hank set up with a flourish, rifle gleaming, movements all for show. Sarah stood off to the side, Remington resting against her hip, eyes on the horizon. The buzzer sounded. Target popped up. Before Hank could even touch his trigger, Sarah's rifle cracked, sound sharp and final. Monitor flashed. Clean shot, left eye. Time, 0.9 seconds. Hank's jaw dropped, hands frozen on his gun, face red. Sarah lowered her, rifle, eyes still on the horizon like she hadn't even noticed the crowd. The lead instructor stepped forward, voice low but clear, carrying weight. "She was trained by Ghost Viper," he said, "and he only had one student." As the crowd stood stunned, retired colonel, uniform crisp despite the heat, approached Sarah, eyes sharp with recognition. He held a faded photo, edges worn, showing a younger man in sniper gear beside a familiar rifle. "This was taken 20 years ago," he said, voice quiet but firm, holding the photo out for her to see. "Ghost Viper's gear. That mark on your rifle. It's his." The crowd hushed, straining to hear. Sarah's fingers brushed the stock where the same mark sat, faint, deliberate notch carved into the wood. She didn't speak, just gave a small nod, eyes lingering on the photo before handing it back. The colonel's gaze softened, like he'd found a piece of a puzzle he'd lost long ago. The camp didn't know how to handle it. Some stared, mouths open, rifles forgotten in their hands. Others looked away, faces tight, egos bruised. Travis muttered, "No way, that's impossible." But his voice was weak, like he was trying to convince himself. Woman with red nails slipped out of the tent, face pale, nails clicking nervously as she gripped her phone. Hank just stood there, his glove still on the ground where he'd thrown it, shoulders slumped. Sarah didn't say a word. She walked back to her table, packed her gear, movements slow, methodical, like the world hadn't just shifted under everyone's feet. That evening, awards ceremony was held under a big tent, string lights casting warm glow over the crowd. Range Master took the stage, holding a plaque etched with silver, voice steady but heavy with respect. "This year's Deadshot champion," he said, pausing for effect, "is Sarah Mitchell." The crowd clapped, but it was different now. Hesitant, almost reverent, like they were clapping for something bigger than themselves. Sarah, H, walked up, boots scuffing the dirt floor, face calm. She took the plaque, gave a small nod, stepped back. No speech, no smile. Guy in the camo hat who'd called her a tourist approached afterward, head low, that flashy watch no longer catching light. I'm sorry," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know." Sarah looked at him, eyes steady, unflinching. "It's fine," she said, and turned away, rifle slung over her shoulder. As Sarah stepped off the stage, young woman, camp staffer with clipboard, approached her, eyes wide with awe. "I found this in the archives," she said, holding out a yellowed logbook, pages brittle with age. "It's from Ghost Viper's last camp. Your name's here, his only student." She pointed to a line written in faded ink. Sarah Mitchell, trained by Viper. The crowd nearby fell silent, some leaning in to see. Sarah's fingers brushed the page, face unchanged, but her eyes softening for just a moment. She handed the book back, voice low. "Keep it safe," she said, and walked away, plaque tucked under her arm. The staffer clutched the book, hands trembling like she'd touched history itself. For everyone who's ever been laughed at, judged, or pushed aside, you weren't wrong. You weren't alone. Your moment's coming, and it's closer than you think. Just keep walking, head up, steady as stone. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow. Thank you for watching.